My name is Frankie FearLess. After a decade of being on a journey with the help of the plant medicine ayahuasca, I realized I've met some of the most amazing beings going through powerful awakenings. They have their own adventures, their own stories, their own wisdom and personalities. Today, I would like to introduce them to you. It's time we become something more together. This is FearLess Conversations. Hey, what's going on? It's your main man, Frank Castle, your Sorcerer Supreme. And this is FearLess Conversations. And I'd like everybody to welcome back to the show, into the conversation, Karen Holton, exopolitical activist and ascension coach and author. Karen Holton, ET and Angelic experiencer, author, exopolitical ambassador, holistic coach, and transdimensional channel. Her professional experience includes shamanic guidance, awakening, and the ascension counseling, as well as public disclosures. Karen is the author of Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, now available as paperback and Kindle on Amazon worldwide. Excuse me. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, Karen hosts the Quantum Guide Show. This weekly podcast is ideally suited to the newly awakened and for those who are awake but may be socially isolated by their alternative belief. She also hosts the podcast called Aliens and Angels, which focuses on personal and paranormal experiences. Karen believes that self-love and self-care build the foundation for personal activism, awakening, and ascension as we become the change that we wish to see in this world. Check out Karen's unique content on most social media platforms at Karen Holton TV. Karen, welcome back.
Oh, nice to be back, Frank. Thank you so much for having me.
I love having you on the show, and I'm excited about today. We're going to talk about your new book. Let's get this up here. I got a little banner for you. Well, and I want to dig in on your new book. We touched on it last time, but you there are a few things you'd like to talk about today, and I want you to start with your maybe your transdimensional experience in 2014, and tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay, so it's interesting. I have the most cool, freaky, paranormal experiences when I'm going through tough times. I don't know if it's because I'm under the squeeze of my life or what, but it seems to really help me to have transdimensional experiences. So I was undergoing a long and very painful recovery from a badly botched surgery. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. And I started having these, what at first I thought were dreams. So I would go to bed at night and tuck myself into bed in my jammies and go to sleep. And I'd be gone for days, weeks, even months, and having all these adventures and wake up in the morning and going, what the fuck was that? And my dream states or my REM, rapid eye movement dreams are very different. They're short, they're disjointed, they don't necessarily make any sense. I can't always remember parts. There's no ongoing storyline. In fact, there's no storyline. They're very abstract, or I won't remember them at all. This was very different, Frank. This was an absolute congruent storyline. So when I would wake up in the morning and I'd realize that it's the very next day, I'm in my bed, I have no evidence or memory of ever being picked up by a spaceship, nothing like that. And yet I had memory of just these amazing, amazing adventures. And I would go to bed at night, go to sleep, and pick up where I left off when I woke up that very morning. And there's a huge time dilation. So, like I said, I was gone for what seemed like days, weeks, months. Of course, they don't have a 24-hour day the way we do here. I spent most of the time aboard what I call the big ship. There's no English, so I don't have English words. So I've just made my descriptions up as best I can to suit my experience. And I would be aboard the big ship and meeting beings. I was eating, I was sleeping, I was doing everything very physical. It was a very physical experience. And then I'd wake up and I'd go, holy shit, what just happened? And so, because of the time dilation, I would just sort of stack experiences on experiences, and it became actually kind of overwhelming before it abruptly ended after 3 months. And a lot of it kind of because I wasn't able to get it all jotted down or organized in my mind, or even find English words and concepts to even describe what I had been through. A lot of that faded from my memory until I was ready to start putting it together. And so in 2020, I had a out of body experience with one of my guides. I call him affectionately Bob the Gray. He looks very much like a stereotypical gray. I see him in my imagination. I don't meet up with him physically. And he facilitated a trip for me back to the big ship to do some exopolitical work, for lack of a better word, just to make it concise. And it was really cool because at that point I was definitely there under like in an ethereal state or like in an astral state. But it was interesting that the beings knew I was there. They looked at me, and everything there is telepathic. There's no language, certainly no earth-based language, and I knew they were sending me greetings and love, and it was the coolest thing. But after that, Bob unlocked a lot of my memories, because at that point I was wanting to start to document my experience. And I've had help along the way. Chris Matthew from Forbidden Knowledge News, he had me present on his very first online conference called Forbidden Knowledge Con. And there I met Preston Dennett. Preston asked me for a copy, a manuscript of my presentation. I sent it to him. He got wildly excited, said, Karen, you got to write a book. You got to write a book, right? And so that's how it all got started. And it took me a lot longer to put the book together than what I thought. And finally, I just published it in December of 2024.
That is amazing. It, a lot of people they talk about wanting to have the experience, so they think, and they wonder how we pull that experience back. How did you remember that? How did you remember that? And I tell them, we're meant to remember at certain times. It's not that I'm better or
Yeah.
worse. Like, I'm like
Mm-hmm.
literally hired for a job specific and have to be that way to do what I'm doing. And I'm just kind of sharing it as I move through. But it's funny. So I recently, a couple of times, was on the ship with Don Rogers. I talk about
Mm-hmm.
it all the time. I'm like, I've done the alien thing, the ETs all over the place. They're always there. They're always going to be there. But to see us on the ship, and I've seen many others on the ship, and what are we doing up there? What do you think we're doing up there? Are
We're
we projecting in?
we're living life to the fullest, Frank. We're living life to the fullest. So I some of how I describe my experience is me making sense of the experience. So it may not be an accurate documentation of the experience. So, for instance, sometimes I think I'm there in an ethereal state. Sometimes I think I'm there in a clone body. They have these clone bodies. Whoop, that image on that side shows a white being with a large black eyes. I don't know if you can see it. It's similar to what we would consider a gray. That's very much like the clone bodies, and they're all the same. So different beings from different dimensional realities can come and share in physicality by using one of these clone bodies. I don't know if they're biological, synthetic. I don't know if they're printed. I don't know how they're made. Like, there's a lot of this. I have more questions than I actually have answers. But I know that the big ship, it doesn't sit in any one specific place. It's not in the Pleiades. It's not this star system or that galaxy. It doesn't work like that. It sits in an interdimensional envelope. So if you can imagine just for a moment in your imagination a whole bunch of ovals, and imagine that each oval represents a different timeline, a different position in the multiverse, a different realm, and they all connect at one point, much the way the flower petals, like in a daisy, all connect at the center, right? There's a place where all these realities overlap in a Venn diagram. And that illustrates where the big ship sits. So it's not here and it's not there. It's sitting in interdimensional space. And those of us that are able to shift into interdimensional reality, we are transdimensional, trans meaning we can shift from here to there. Well, it's not really space or distance. We're actually operating outside of the time and space as we understand it. And again, how we understand things has been extremely limited, and we've been had truth and full truth, kept from us, so that we're as a measure of social control. But anyway, so that's why we're able to come from all different timelines, dimensional realities, states of what we perceive as physicality. And we can all come together with beings who live in that environment, and they can share experiences with us, teach us things, show us that there's so much more than what we believe is real in the awakened state here on earth at this time.
That's amazing. I've recently, with all the drone sightings, I went out one night. They had photos of them all over the playground over here, like really high up, kind of zooming in and out. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. However, they told me in the very beginning what they'll show you and what they release. If at any point they don't continuously release this information and they try at any point to subjugate you or distract you again using a galactic like they're from outer space, if we show up, I saw Project Bluebeam or whatever, all these things
Mhm.
flying around, and then I saw the real ship and I was like thrown back by it. I was like, wow, that's crazy looking. That's completely different. And they were like, yeah, we don't play around. So no matter what you see and what you think you're going to see, just remember what's there and is watching them. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then being up there I've been up there in my astral body. I went up physically twice. Then I projected in with clients. It looked like they dropped the ship down around us and brought us up into the ship, but it took in the 3D, like physically, we were standing there or sitting around. We were in a living room setting, and you can just see everyone, like as if you were standing in the ship. But I could see that it was like an image of me, like a holograph was like moving around the ship as me. So I couldn't
Mhm.
go and just start touching buttons and everything and go crazy, but people were introducing themselves to me, and they're like, "Don't you remember?" One of the guys was fan of the music. He goes, "Oh, Sons of the Sun," and I was like, "Did you just bring him here to say that?" Like, it was weird, and they're like, "Oh, no,
Mhm.
you gotta get comfortable with this."
Mhm.
But then I've also been up there in the light body
Mhm.
where I'm standing over my body that's on the ship, and they're making repairs, and I'm going, "So what is it?" So the transdimensional behind it is all of those things are possible with being the
Mhm.
beings that we are.
We are, our bodies are an amazing, amazing technology. And this is one of the things that the powers that be have been keeping from us. And sadly, those who tried to talk about their experiences, even in recent history, Frank, I don't want to disturb anybody, but they've been doing what they call frontal lobotomies or psychosurgery on people even up until and including the 1980s, which is not that long ago. And then they actually have switched over to using chemical lobotomization to shut down our technology, to make us think that we're small and limited and fearful, because then they can control us. And the thing is that we're coming into our power. More of us are having these interdimensional, transdimensional experiences, some through psychedelics, some through deep meditation, some through astral projection, near-death experiences, lucid dreaming, um, um, sorry, lucid dreaming, astral projection, and I believe a lot of that is overlap of the same phenomenon, including remote viewing, right? So there's so many ways that we're all experiencing. And then rather than us being in competition with our experiences, I think that our experiences are complementary. So we're describing things, we're filtering our experiences through our own perceptual universe, and we're sharing it as best as we know how. But the overall themes are excitingly similar, Frank. And so I'm not the only one that has these experiences, but I wanted to be out there and bold and share from my heart what I've seen, experienced, so that other people can go, wow, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I am having experiences. Maybe my body and my mind are this amazing technology. Thank God. And what exciting times we live in that finally this is all coming to the fore.
So, I'm so happy it's finally moving to the front. I had an experience with a really good friend of mine, Nick, and then he was doubting the whole procedure of ayahuasca or whatever, but he was willing to go through it. He wanted to see if it was true. So we went under and we were on a spaceship together, and we were just looking out the window together. And when I looked over at him, he had all these things hooked up to him. So it was like hyper realistic. Like it was more real than it is here. Right. But him hooked up to the machine that it was like scanning him and searching through him for different things. It was like pipes coming at him. So it was a little weird. And he sat back down on the table and he said, "Hey, man, are we on a spaceship?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "You can see out the other window too." I said, "But I think this is ours." There were two like seats. And then he was like, "You think so?" And I looked around. The bottom was layered with colored pictures of the Avengers and X-Men. And I said, "Oh, that's me. When I get bored, if I'm sitting around, if I don't have nothing to do, I'll color for like 2 minutes, and then I'll like a little kid, I'll take it off. I'll put it up on the fridge or something." And I go, "That's definitely something I would do." And then I asked ayahuasca, like, what is this about? Like, we go from that spiritual, the solar beings and all that, into the starships. And they were like, you just never learned this. You're human. Frank doesn't understand this yet, but this is your family. Like you have a lot of family up here, and everyone has returned, but they never left. So that was the big reveal. Like we've always been here. It's just we had to wait for you to turn on, right? So your book thoroughly goes through your experience, even gives help. Somebody said about you last time talking to me was, "You guys are solution oriented." I like that. And I was like, "Thank you." Because that's what you need. You want to hear the story of outer space and inner earth and all this. That's great. But at the end of the day, you still got a cat. You got to clean up after the cat. You got to feed her.
Yeah.
You got to clean up. You got to take a shower still. A lot of 3D stuff to do.
Sure do. And another thing is in chapter 9, sorry, in chapter 9 of the book, I actually make recommendations that people may want to follow, may not, but on how they can have their own transdimensional experiences. That I'm not some kind of special person that I'm able to do. Sorry, I'm coughing. That I'm able to do this. There's many of us that
Well,
have done
someone
this.
has to come first. It's
Hmm.
not even that we're first. It's just that people are actually just paying attention.
Hmm.
We've been in waves the whole time talking about it. My brother
Hmm.
said to me recently, "How come nobody said nothing to us?" Like, "Oh, I've been talking to you for 10 years. You ignore me all the
Yeah,
time."
yeah. Same for me. I've been talking about this since it was happening, like family and stuff. And excuse me, I have to cough. And they just kind of go, yeah, okay. And by the way, this is happening in our world. That change the subject, like and people go, well, how come you didn't tell me about it? I said, I did. I tried, but obviously you weren't ready to hear it. And so I'm not going to waste my time and energy. And also the other part of this is we get made fun of a lot. We have to take our comeuppance for being honest. And that's part of the false matrix or the false construct here on earth.
Yeah, I'm
It's
not
going to
trying to get you
stop
to
us.
join a cult. I'm
Hmm.
just trying to get you to recognize what who you are. At the end of the
Hmm.
day, do you this was my question to a couple of people recently. I'm like, do you even know who you are? Do you know why you're here? Have you ever looked inside and thought other than outside of yourself, like a god out there or some character that's out there that is promising some kind of salvation outside of that stuff? Well, who are
Hmm.
you and what are you doing here? Do you have any inkling? None of them have a response.
Hmm.
But the ones that
Hmm.
do have a response are like, "Man, I think there's something going on so much more." Like they you can see the flower begins to open,
Hmm.
but we're all at different levels. So it's not an I told you so. It's just you got caught by wave 1, you heard it, maybe you ignored
Hmm.
it to wave 3, then you started having your experience. Now we're at wave 7 and you're talking about your experiences helping wave 8, 9 and 10 come through,
Hmm.
right? Because we'll do this for a while and then move up. I mean, the idea is to move into those positions. What
And
what
I
things
think,
what do you suggest about that
well,
someone can do?
as we were talking earlier before we went on camera, I think the biggest barrier is fear. And we've been taught to be afraid of anything different than us. We've been taught to be afraid, like the churches say, oh my God, like for years, I went to the church, different churches and asked questions. Why am I having these experiences? Because I was having paranormal experiences from the time I was a child before this particular experience happened in 2014. I was born in the 1950s. I've been around for quite a while. And I would go to the different churches and stuff and ask questions, and they say, oh my God, don't do that. You're opening yourself up to demons. You're opening yourself up to the devil. And yet, actually, if you do a thorough search through the um, canonical Bible, there's actually lots of evidence that this is a natural experience for us. But anyway, so I was always afraid. I was always shutting myself down. I even went to the pharmaceutical industry, went to the medical industry and wanted pills to help make it stop, because I was in so much fear. But I think the most important thing about the book is people who read it, they're going to go, oh my God, I've had some similar experiences in my life. Karen's not afraid. Frank's not afraid. Maybe I got nothing to be afraid of. And as soon as we conquer our fear, that is the biggest chore in all of this, then we can start to be open to the endless possibilities that are our birthright. And so it's conquering fear, I think, is the most important thing. And people who read my book, they don't have to believe in my experience. They don't have to, but they're going to learn some stuff that's going to help them to be less fearful and trust in themselves more. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like the whole concept of fearless and why I even chose it, I was told to you must become fearless. And I was like, okay, but you keep showing me things that are like beyond anything I've ever seen or ever could be, right? So they're like, oh, well, you don't wake up fearless for the most part. You become fearless. You do a little bit, and now you're not afraid of that. You do a little bit of this more, then you're not afraid of it. It's already done. What are you talking about? And you just keep moving, and every day you grow towards becoming fearless. You shoot for the stars. If you hit the moon, you've done your job already. You're way past where you even should be. So you just keep that momentum going. There's going to be days where you're absolutely frightened. I've been in fear so many times, which is why I wanted to become fearless.
Mm-hmm.
There were just too many things, and then the older I became, the anxieties that just show up because of that. Like I used to perform for crowds, 20,000 people. If I was in a crowd of 20,000 people right now, I'm having a heart palpitation thinking about it. Like, I don't want to be in that crowd no more because I know what's going on. Right. So you want to have these anxieties removed by getting to the root of the cause.
Mhm.
And in the
Mhm.
book, it also has steps on how to, which is that's very important. Because where do you
Mhm.
start? Where do we start?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I totally believe that. And so, conquering fear is a huge part of this. And, you know, we have to be true to our feelings. If we're feeling fearful, acknowledge that. That's okay. That's a natural kind of response that's put there to protect us. But then what can we do to move past that? Well, for one thing we can do is check in with people like you and me, you know, who have moved past this, and we experience other realms, and we've benefited. We've become better people, healthier people, happier people as a result. And as they always say, the proof is in the pudding. And so, I wanted to just describe the first two chapters. The first chapter is just clarification, letting people know I'm not part of the secret space program. I'm not part of a religious group. I'm not part of a politic. I'm not part of, you know, there's all kinds of talk nowadays about Ashtar Command and the Federation of Planets and all that. I'm not part of any of that. None of that at all, not even close. I'm not the spokesperson from the beings that I interact with. They don't need a spokesperson. They can contact directly anytime they want. And then I get a little bit into the things within the false matrix that's been holding us back. And then the second chapter, I get into my paranormal history. So, for instance, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, she, as a child, was having experiences with what we would call extraterrestrials. She maintained contact with them through her whole life. There's all kinds of freaky stuff in my history as a child, what I went through. I touch a little bit about my childhood traumas. I don't get into great detail, but I want people to know that, you know, probably, Frank, we've all been traumatized one way or another. And yes, it takes some work to work our way through it. We're changed, and those bad things never should have happened. You know, I'm not saying, oh, it's great if you've been traumatized because it opens you up to other realms. I'm not saying that. But there seems to be, you know, a silver lining to that cloud when we work on our own shit, get to know ourselves and who we really are. We seem to have an easier time with transdimensional contact, and so I wanted to bring that out. And then chapters 3 and up through and including chapter 8 is all about what I learned on the big ship, my actual experience. One chapter just goes into the big ship. Another one is, what is ET like? I've got, like I said, I've got this image here. It's an AI generated. It's not really a selfie of me and different people aboard the big ship, but it shows that some of the beings look a lot like us. We would think they were human if we didn't know that they were not, and some look a little different, but we're not any kind of hideous monsters. You know, we're all from different family lines. And just like on Earth, you know, you could be from the same genetic family with the same mother, the same father, and you get together with some cousins, and they're your mother and your father's brothers and sisters and their kids. And we can look completely different. Some have similarities and some look completely different. Same is true for ET. And you know, they have all kinds of diversity, and some are bigger and some are smaller and some have big noses and some have big ears and some are short. It's like all different. And but we've been sold this sort of stereotype of what ET is like. And so another thing I do in the book is I demystify this, and I bring out that there's great diversity that we can't even imagine, even amongst ETs of similar family or racial lines. They have no concept for racism. So, a lot of the things that we've been raised to believe are real or parts of our programming, no, they're not. They have never been. The beings that I interact with have escaped um, constructs thousands and thousands of years ago. So they're born and raised as free beings. How refreshing to get a taste of that and then be able to bring that home and open up my own life by going, nope, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Nope, that is not even a real thing. Everyone's running around like it's a real thing. It's not a real thing. You know, we're of the same family. We're human beings on earth. That's the fact.
No,
You
I
know,
know.
all these subcategories, and it's ridiculous.
Well,
It's just
that's the enemy doing that.
crazy
The
making.
enemy taught us that way long ago and perpetuated that kind of stuff forward. So there always would be a lingering problem with
Yeah.
each person. And I tell people, look, if you believe in Shiva or Jesus or whatever, some of these guys are different colors. How are you going to deal with that? Right.
Hmm.
So this guy's not, his color's not good, but his color is good. Like, what are you talking about? It's,
Hmm.
you're going to get the biggest blend you've ever seen of everything,
Hmm.
and then it's like, just love yourself, love where you're at, like, the human experience is what I'm getting at.
Hmm.
And then you will meet them, right? And then it opens you up again to the whole next thing. But if you hold on to like racism, like really tight, you're having a whole, you got to heal that trauma and fix that problem, or you're most likely not ready to step into that next frequency, the next level of what's supposed to happen.
Yep. And I think that the powers that be here on Earth are losing their grip and they know it. So I believe that there will be a false alien invasion. And a lot of people are offended by the word alien. So I'll say extraterrestrial invasion. There's no way any of these beings are going to do any of that. Now, there might be some nefarious groups that are working with humans in charge. But I don't know anything about that. I don't have any experience with any of that. I've never seen it, I've never witnessed it. But then it's going to be, oh, all of us Earth people have to come together because the evil extraterrestrials are going to try to come and steal our sperm or God knows what.
Yeah.
And again, you know what I mean? It's like, and when you look at it objectively, you know, like I understand national pride, but at the same time, here's a bunch of people all standing on planet Earth, and we've got these imaginary lines. Like I live in Canada, you live in the States. There's an imaginary line with armed guards protecting that imaginary line, right? And so we've divided the Earth up into all these imaginary divisions and we believe ours is the best. We're the greatest nation in the world. We're the most powerful. Like, oh my God, you know?
That's why it's called pride, national pride, right?
Yeah. And so I'm just saying, like, I understand it, but at the same time, and I'm not saying we should throw it out the window. I'm just saying, what are we going to do when ET becomes more manifest? You know, are we going to go, oh, we have to guard our imaginary lines in our countries because they, you know what I mean? Like, we need to wake up and take responsibility and also move into that frequency of love. So these other beings that I met, I don't know about your experience, Frank. I'd like to hear what you think. They don't have any religion. They don't have a religion. They believe in universal consciousness. They believe in instead of going to a church to do worship, they themselves um, embody that worship in their everyday life by being more loving beings, non-judgmental, helpful, patient, kind, mild, you know, and it creates such a beautiful
Compassion.
environment. Compassion. It's a beautiful, safe environment where we can just be, and then we can start to unfold as we were meant to into our fuller potential. What are your thoughts on that, Frank?
Well, so as you were talking, I was thinking like, who does that other stuff? And it's always the enemy who's part of rituals and some kind of dark religious sect of some kind, something that follows some kind of book where there's a lot of I'm over you. I have the information over you. My eat so the reptilians, when I dealt with them, they actually prayed to the artificial intelligence, which they're like, it's not artificial intelligence to them. And there's like a hierarchy with that. But the light beings in general, no matter what path they tend to take, we wind up here, right where we're at now. We start to wake
Mhm.
up, we walk away from that because we know it may have been good from here to here, but from the next step up, it's been part of the matrix programming,
Mhm.
at least the way they gave it to us. So not to talk bad about someone's religion, the way it was given to the people, reconstructed probably thousands of times to fit the narrative, right? Where the true one isn't actually a Bible, it's more like a how-to,
Mhm.
right? Where it's just like, oh, listen to the story for an example so you can move into a better position yourself. Not
Mhm.
so in an abundant place. I have to cut everyone off and take for myself. That's very reptilian. I've never
Mhm.
had the galactic people I've dealt with are just the nicest people. I
Mhm.
like Ashtar and like I know him personally. I've so it took me a long time to deal with him because he that didn't sound right. Um, he would let me come into the area and do things. He would contact me. So I would just greet him once in a while, but I had contacts on that ship already.
Mhm.
So I would always say, "Is this real? Like, what is it with this guy? Like, he's like glowing and he's nice or whatever. He don't like Lord Ashtar. He don't like Commander this, like just Ashtar. It's a title,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I put it to the test, like I put everything else to the test. I went up there once and I saw some people that I have watched videos of that I know are doing the same as me. And I'm like, wow, we all have that similar information. I was like, if anyone in this room was dark and or had nefarious things, they wouldn't know that they could dance with the creator. And he looked at me and I heard music came on and the whole place just started dancing. It
Mhm.
was such a high frequency experience. And I said, that's how I started to get to know these beings, right? I put into play what the mantis taught me because I have a bad back and neck. He was showing me some Tai Chi moves and stuff. He's like, if you move like this, it'll build the muscles around what you're trying to fix.
Mhm.
Not that you got to do mantis style and stuff. He's like, you should put this forward. It's like a dance. So I did that up there with them with my own little twist. And they were like, he's paying attention. And more happiness came forward, not less. There was
Mhm.
no trap. Nobody was trying to steal your soul or eat your baby. There was none of that. There
Mm-mm.
was like literal glowing love and hugs and high fives and handshakes. Couldn't believe some of the people I saw there. Even some of
Mhm.
my not real like I don't want to call them enemies, but like someone I'm not really cool with. There's a couple people
Mhm.
I'm not cool with. They were up there. And it's like,
Mhm.
dude, on earth, we're just humans. So I can't control that he's mad at that and you're mad at this. But up here, that doesn't fly. Everyone's cool up here. We all
Mhm.
have a job, and it's not everyone is hearing like you are, Frank, like you are, Karen. Like they can't hear it yet. So they don't understand.
Mhm.
Right. And then the biblical people will put forth the idea of someone speaking to them
Mhm.
as either God or demon. So you
Mhm.
already have it categorized, right? Like, ooh, that's dangerous. And I'm like, the devil has been whispering, air quotes, has been whispering in your ear the whole time. The only devil I've seen is yourself and literal reptilians speaking, invisible right next to you, trying to get you to do stupid things. Like I've seen them do that.
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, everyone can whisper things, but no one's allowed to interfere,
Mhm.
you know?
Interesting. Now, I want to clarify the book does not uh, put down anybody's religion or try to dissuade people from religion. My own personal opinion is that all the holy writings are suggested guides to living. They're lessons to learn from mistakes from the past. A lot of like what's in the Old Testament is what not to do, lessons on what not to do, not lessons on what to do, you know. And there's suggested guides to living. You know, when I went to AA years ago, we had the blue book and it was a suggested guide to living. And I realized that's what it was. So if it works for you, great. Like that is never a point of contention within the book. But I do present spirituality the way I understood it to the best of my ability aboard the big ship and with those beings. So their act of worship is to be the best them that they can be, to be more loving, more patient, and more compassionate. And it was such a beautiful environment. And I'm telling you, Frank, as soon as humans, and the other thing is they're not that far ahead of us, they're at our next stage of development. So they've learned to put the petty divisiveness and all that behind them, and they've moved on. And now they're showing us what we get when we move on. And so as soon as we're ready to stop going to war with each other and hold on to resentments within our core families and on, and the many myriads of discontent we could get into while being human on this earth at this time, it helps us to really get that we need to become the change we want to see in our world. And so we don't have to be perfect. In fact, the whole concept of perfection is, again, part of the false matrix. It's meant to discourage us. And what does perfection even mean? No, we don't need to. We just need to do a little bit better. You know, it's kind of like 2 steps forward, one back, 2 steps forward, one back. And you look back over a couple of years and go, oh my God, have I ever made huge changes? I didn't think that was possible for me. I didn't think I was ever going to get a grip over my temper. I didn't think I would ever be able to have patience with my sister and let her be her while I be me. I didn't know I could do. Holy shit, what a difference. And now I have peace and I have more love, and I actually have a relationship with my sister that I didn't have before, you know, and all these good things start to come to me. So I've just done my best to write about what my life was like before I met ET, what my life was like during my communion with ET, and then how can other people have contact? How can they prepare for contact? And at the very end, before the conclusion, I get into what does ET think of us? Because we think we're all so important being human. And Frank, most ETs, and there are more than you could ever imagine, they don't even know that we're alive. They don't even know we're here. They've gotten on with their civilization, their missions, all the things they're busy doing. I don't know, Frank, did you ever see that show called The Village? It came out in the early 2000s by M. Night
Yes.
Shyamalan or whatever. And so the people that live in this village, they think they're the only ones. They don't realize they're living in a construct that's embedded in a populated area. And the people outside of the village don't know they're there. And the people in the village don't know that there are people outside. And it isn't until you get to the end of the movie that somebody actually ends up stumbling out into the mainstream society. And they're not weird and they're not monsters. They're just like the people in the village.
Yeah,
And it's
everybody's the same.
very, yeah, and it's very much like that with ET and transdimensional beings. Um, most of them don't even know we exist, and most of us here don't know they exist. And so I'm hoping my book's going to just pop open some
There's so
understanding.
many, Karen, that we know energetically. As you're talking, they're here with me saying, well, they're here with us. And they're like, don't forget us. I'm like, the best experience I had, the most fun was with 5 ant beings, ant people. They look like giant ants. They don't act like giant ants. I mean, they do all the things, I guess, like a fully conscious and aware giant ant you would imagine, but nonviolent, loving. All they do is crack jokes. That's we had
Yeah.
dinner together, and they kept covering their mouths so I wouldn't see all their teeth because they
Mhm.
were like, "Oh, that's rude. We don't want to scare you." I'm like, "I'm not scared of you guys. I feel love." And they're like, "Okay, well, we're here on the planet. We've been here the whole time.
Mhm.
We are in Earth."
Mhm.
Right? Raptor beings that normally wouldn't be cool with you, but because it's Earth and you're the ambassadors of Earth, they're more than happy, beyond happy, if you could find common ground. And I did. They love chocolate. Something I had to figure this out so I can stand with them,
Mhm.
because they're the scariest things. I've been around reptilians. They could remain calm and just hang out, and you still feel weird, and they smell funny, and they're giant. They're scary, but not as scary as like a herky jerky moving. I it was like Jurassic Park came to life and had little outfits on, but
Mhm.
they they were rough. They were hard to be around. You can't move your hands around them. You got to be real cool. And then I said, I heard somebody loves chocolate, because my cats, when they love something, I'm like, look what I got. I don't give them chocolate, but I heard these guys like, and they immediately were like lined up, and we started talking. What's the best chocolate? What's your favorite chocolate? Why don't this went on for hours. I was like, this is like when Forrest Gump talked about shrimp,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, this is some wild stuff. And then anything with a hint of chocolate, they want to try.
Mhm.
So if you have coffee that's chocolate, they're like, oh, could we try it? And then boom, I'm like, wow, this is how it really works. You can like talk to people because they're people. This is the
Mhm.
thing you got to get over in your mind, the fear. They're people.
Mhm.
They go to sleep at night like you. They wake up, they put their little outfit on, whatever it is, and they go and they do their thing. Whether
Mhm.
they're this big or they're 200 feet tall, we're all still doing basically the same thing, right? And then
Mhm.
there is such a mixture out there. I met an octopus that landed on me. It was like in space, and I thought it was going to eat me because it wrapped around me. I had it like a hat, and then it never saw me before, and then said, "Oh, you got me on your planet, but I'm from here." And I was like, "Wow, thank goodness you're nice," because it was so frightening in the middle of an ayahuasca trip. I have an octopus hat now. And then it
Mhm.
just was like, "See you later." Boom, gone. And it was like, wow, he's alive out there. And I'm like, wow, you're alive out here. Interesting. And there's
Very
so many more
interesting.
good ones than there are bad ones.
I think you touched on something else that's really important is we have failed to see the sentience, intelligence of other creatures here on Earth. So, for instance, the whales, oh my God, we can't even measure because we're not smart enough to measure what they're capable of. And meanwhile, they're being destroyed by sonar and all kinds of technologies that's causing them to go up on the beaches and commit suicide because they can't stand the pain. But octopus, another example. There are so many creatures that we have not even begun. Even you take a look at the ants in your backyard, how organized they are, and you wonder, gee, I wonder what they do for fun, and how they care about their families, and I wonder what they're up to. And I know you're a big fan of cats, so am I. I love my cats. And, we think of cats as being all one way or dogs all being one way, but no, every cat has its own personality. Some cats are absolute assholes. Some are the sweetest thing that you ever met. And many are just a combination of the two. Do you know what I'm saying, Frank? And we don't understand that they love and they feel, and when their kittens are taken away, they mourn the loss. Like, we have no idea about the level of that the animals and the different creatures on this planet are capable of, because we've shut our minds to that. And boy, once we start to open that, oh, it really changes things too. So there's so many levels of life, and we're part of something amazing. And the other thing I want to quickly touch on is, our eyes take a very tiny, tiny little space of the light spectrum. Our ears hear very small, small little spectrum of sound, our sense of touch, like all of that. There is so much going on around us. And I think that's what ayahuasca and psychedelics do, is they open you up to what you're surrounded with. You know, it's huge. I mean, the air, we think the air is nothing. It just sometimes it's wind that blows. No, it's full of life. Water, full of life. You know, your backyard, full of life. We're full of life. Oh my God, probably got more bacteria living in us than we do cells. Like the whole thing is alive and moving and intelligent, and you know, so yeah, you want to go into outer space or inner space. Actually, to me, outer space is inner space. And but oh my God, let's bring it home into the everyday and see the pageantry, the miracles we're surrounded by, and the potential for seeing life is so much more than screen time, basically.
Absolutely, getting back in touch with nature. I used to have this, thing with ants, right? Because we had the basement apartment. One spring, it just they came in the house, and I could not get rid of them. But I couldn't put, poison down because I had so many cats, right? So we had more than 10, and they were running in and out. I go, "We can't use poison. What do I do?" So, at the time, I was drinking a lot of ayahuasca, and they said, "Why don't you go to the mother of all ant beings, like the queen, and
Mm-hmm,
ask her to filter it down to them to back out, but offer to feed them, but on the yard line,
mm-hmm,
put food for them out there." So I went literally during that experience. I just went. I said, Aunt Bean Queen Mother. She was right there. I explained to her what was going on. Then I showed it to her, and she said, "Thank you so much for having the respect to ask me." Right?
mm-hmm,
The ants
mm-hmm,
within 2 weeks, it took 2 weeks, they were completely gone. They were all outside though, and then I started you take sugar, white sugar, some cat food sometimes, like the leftover, we would kinda kick it off into the back of the yard, and we would just see them carrying it off, never
mm-hmm,
being bothered with them again, not
mm-hmm,
having them in the cat food dishes, not having them in the apartment anywhere. Very nice. And she contracted it with me. She said, "How long are you gonna be in your home?" And I said, "About 3 years." And then it was like 3 and a half, and on that half point, it was like, "Oh, it started happening again." I'm like, "Well, we're
mm-hmm,
moving so the new neighbors can do this because I'm not gonna be here to feed you." So we
mm-hmm,
reset it like a theatrical play for the next consciousness to come in and have their experience in that space.
mm-hmm,
Interesting stuff.
mm-hmm.
But you get so
It
much with
sure is.
respect.
It's about respect. And, you know, I think we should also talk before the end of the show a little bit about self respect and self love. We're not even taught what love actually is. And we need to love ourselves before we can love other beings and other people and other things. And self love includes being patient with ourselves, um, having a respect for ourselves, having self control, deciding what we're going to eat, what we're not going to eat, never mind what the commercials say. You know, to be honest with you, once you have a bit of an awakening, the foods you used to like are kind of like crap. You don't want to eat them anymore. You know, you start to crave a better quality of food. But getting enough sleep, getting fresh air, keeping your home clean, you know, being industrious in your own way, that's self respect, self love. And once we start to master that, then it's easier to go outward with it. But we're taught, oh no, that's selfish. You can't love yourself. You have to put everybody else first. No, no, no. It doesn't work that way. Not in my life. I'm wondering what you think about that, Frank.
So what I've been taught specifically by the mushrooms, if you have the ability to clean your house and then sit down and do mushrooms, or just sit down and do mushrooms, but your house is kind of dirty. Let's say you haven't picked up after the cat, you could kind of smell it, you have to change the litter, et cetera, with the trash, dishes, everything. When I'm under, I realize that low frequency beings, things, entities connect to the dust, to the poop, to the pee smell, because that's what attracts them is
Mm-hmm,
your lower vibration and frequency. Like you're living in unclean and you're like, no problem, I'll just clean it later. But you're doing something to clean yourself, and they're like, you're kind of doing it wrong. So your
mm-hmm,
experience will tend to get darker the less like you clean up after yourself. Like if you haven't showered in a week and you smell, I'm using this like if you take the bus and you're in the Bronx and you're doing it on purpose, and then you're eating mushrooms, the mushrooms are going to show you what comes to you when you're doing it like that,
Mhm.
what you attract with that vibration, frequency, the smell, whatever. And you realize, wow, it's me poisoning the pool.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then you have an experience where you're like, oh, I'm gonna just clean up my room, light a candle, some sage. I'm gonna make sure the cat stuff is done. Everybody's fed so I can have a 4-hour experience and not have
Mhm.
to get involved. Your experience becomes beautiful and it unlocks and it's full of awareness. And I notice when we use words like spiritual, the people go, some people turn off instantly. Oh, it's another guru, it's another thing, it's another,
Mhm.
and it's gotten a bad rap, but even though it's the only word for it that we have right now that works for beings like us, but it's also just higher amounts of awareness. So you're
Mhm.
in the same exact scenario you're in, except you're fully aware of so much more. And to describe that would be kind of crazy. At my level, you're connected. You can tell when something's coming, when it's going to happen. You can put love ahead and get the parking space and make sure things are more lining up for you because you're doing the work on the other end. You're making sure your trauma's healed and that you're okay. Your wife is okay. Is everything going on in my house is good. When you start to handle your business, then go back in and meditate on it. It creates area inside of your density in your flesh body for more light, and more light is
Mhm.
more information is more awareness, and at this level it's where spirituality meets 3D. So calling it spiritual is the only thing we got, and the new age kind of ruins it, but we're going to take it back
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
just see people with no spirit. So it is spiritual, but it's not religious.
Mhm.
Don't make the mistake.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep, I agree. So, people might say, okay, so you've had these transdimensional experiences, you've met other beings, so what? What's it done for you? Well, what it's done for me is it's shown me what's possible, not only in my own life, but in my family and my neighborhood and my community, and it spreads out and connects with other people that are doing similar. So it makes me want to become the change that I want to see in my world. So instead of reaching outside of myself to experts or even volunteer work, I start with that within myself and volunteer for myself, volunteer in my own life first. Get that going before I start turning that outward towards helping other people. And I have found huge success with that, much more than when I did it the other way around. And I was so exhausted from volunteering and helping other people and trying to be a good person. I had nothing left for me. Just grab whatever and shove it in my mouth and not get enough sleep. It didn't work. So I think it starts with self. And so the beings that I met, that's how they do it. They take very good care of themselves. They mind their own business. It's interesting. They communicate. We don't have time to really get into it too much, but they communicate through telepathy. And it's not like hearing English in your head. It's kind of a combination of like short, visual clips that run through your imagination. It's body sensations, feelings. Many use gesturing. That's how communication happens. But it's very, very respectful. And another thing that you don't hear other people talk about is they don't just broadcast and everybody picks up all the telepathy. It's actually was part of my training that I had to learn how to keep my thoughts separate to myself.
That's the
And
hardest
that's
part.
called, and that was the hardest part. And
Holy
that's
shit.
called shielding. That's called shielding. So everyone has to learn to shield. Then you have to learn how to share communication with maybe just 2 or 3 beings, or maybe just one other being, and you're not broadcasting to the whole group. And so it's easiest to just broadcast to the whole group, but that's not very polite and it's not very loving, because they got their own realities and their own thoughts and their own, communication
It's
style, right?
nobody wants to be on a conference call all the time.
Exactly, exactly. And you hear other people talk about telepathy, but they don't talk about, how like I go into it in great detail in my book. There's 4 stages to telepathic training that I did. I'm not saying that it's all like that, but this was my experience and what that was like, how what the basic beginning level was like, what the intermediate level was like, the advanced, and then mastery. And it was the hardest part throughout all of it was learning to shield and keep my private thoughts to myself and not be, yeah. And so I thought that was interesting. So actually, people can learn how to do telepathy actually by following the steps that are in the book. It will actually help them.
I learned
But
that when I meditate, like I'll do something wrong, they'll kind of point it out and be like, "Don't really do that." And then I'll go back to the meditation and 5 minutes here, 20 minutes in the shower, whatever. And I'll recognize that, but I have already cleared my headspace to where
mhm,
only those ridiculous, like questions and thoughts are just kind of waiting to come out because, oh, look at you. I could just talk to the ET. How many? And they're like, yo, calm down. Right. Just,
mhm.
just say hello. So, when I meditated on that, I was like, I would say to myself, be quiet, look around you. And I was in the space. And I'm like, I'm not drawing anything to myself. I'm not drawing anyone's eyes or anything. And if I am, it's because they just see my beauty. They don't have to hear my big mouth. Look at
Mhm,
me with loving eyes. Right. And then I kind of tricked myself to shut up, which was really difficult on the inside. And I
mhm.
still sometimes I can't control it, man. Like I met an angel, like a biblical angel, the eyeball with the things and everything, and I poked it in its eye, not thinking.
Oh
I
dear.
walked right up to it and said, "No, I would never do that." Boop, and it slapped the crap out of me. And it was like, "Oh, I didn't mean to. I couldn't. Why did I do that?" And then I went back and learned, and now the communication's reopened again. You got to learn. You
Mhm,
got to stand a few feet away until you can get close enough, and then get close enough and learn why you did that. None of it hurt, by the way. It hurt your feelings because you're not doing it correctly because you
mhm,
want to be part of something more. See, I look at it as my birthright. This is us. Let's get on with it already. Give me back what's mine. You don't get none. And then let me learn now. Somebody teach me how to deal with all this stuff. And let's get to the root and work our way up. Let's start in pre kindergarten and work me right up to where I have to be. I'm ready to learn because life sucked the last um the last 10 years have been good, but before that, before any of this stuff happened, I got bored with it really fast.
mhm,
And I'm like, is there anything more? Anything? And then it was no answer. There was no answer. And then everything happened. And I'm like, wow. So I really am going back. That this is the hard work we talk about. Like that's why
mhm,
you need steps and meditation because telepathy isn't just I'll talk to you with your mind. You have all these other things that are going on that you have to
mhm,
learn how to do to make it acceptable. When I had my first real good one, my body rang with the most beautiful tone and I had a light vibration over my light self. And it was like a phone was ringing, but it was beautiful. I was like, "Ooh." And then I knew who was calling. And
mhm,
then I answered it, and they just showed up and were like and it just came through. That's why when you said
mhm,
it's just a picture, it's like all this just rushed in from the hello that was really good, and I had full understanding of it and was like, "Wow, that's amazing." And it's good to and it takes place like that as well. So you're accomplishing a lot if you're paying attention, and
mhm,
paying attention is part of loving yourself.
mhm, mhm. It sure is.
Okay, so lis tell everyone where they can find your book, where they can come check you out and listen
Yeah,
to your podcast.
thank you. And thanks for having me on the show. Always a pleasure, Frank,
I
to
love
share
having you
space
on. I
with
love
you.
hearing all about it.
I love having you
I'm a
on my
fan.
show, and now we're both part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, so we're gonna be hanging out in a couple of weeks doing a panel together. That's gonna be fun too.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So, So I have two podcasts, one on Wednesday at noon Pacific, 1 o'clock Mountain, or 3 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday, and it's alive. I have guests, and we talk about all kinds of amazing stuff, all upbuilding, kind of spiritual, kind of woo-woo kind of stuff. And you'd be welcome to join us in the live chat, watch the replay, up to you. And then every Sunday, I have the Aliens and Angels podcast, and there I have real people with real experiences. So we're not just researchers or theorizing. No, we're talking about our actual experiences. And for the rest of January, maybe a little longer, I'm going to be covering sections of my book and letting the people that are there live ask questions, add their comments, their take on things, whatever. It's a very relaxed environment and a lot of really, really good people. So everyone's welcome to join me there. My book, Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, is available on Amazon worldwide. Now, because it's a recent publication, if you just go to Amazon and type in the title, it might come back as not showing any results. But if you go into the menu and you choose the Amazon bookstore or the Kindle bookstore, because the book's available in paperback and in Kindle version, and then you put in the title, you'll definitely find it. And of course, I've shamelessly put all my links to the book in Canada and the United States, both Amazons, in pretty much everything that I produce these days. I also have a website that's kind of a one-stop shop for everything, including a shop for those who want to support my work. And that is www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. I'm obviously a different kind of health coach. And that's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. And check out under the free resources tab. I've got just tons and tons of information. And I've also got links to all of my shows on the Quantum Guide show and the Aliens and Angels podcast. So I guess that's about it for me. I hope you pick up my book. I hope that you're able to benefit from it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's very different. What I also really like about my book is it's adding a whole new dimension to the UFO and extraterrestrial narrative. It's adding a whole dimension. So it links the political parts of being human on Earth. It links the spiritual aspects. It links the extraterrestrials, the UFOs. It links everything and puts a whole different spin on it, which I think is a good thing because we come from different perspectives, but also the powers that be are kind of weaponizing the mainstream narrative of UFOs at this time and ETs. And this helps to break that down as well. So, yeah, I hope everybody likes my book, and it's a gift of love, and I really enjoyed getting it out there. And thank you, Frank, so much for having me on your show and to share with your community a little bit about my experience. It's wonderful.
Karen, thank you so much. Shout outs to the FearLess family. They love you. I love you. Don't forget, everyone, check out Sons of the Suns music. Karen Holton, author, Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors on Amazon. Check it out. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to having you on again soon. We have a lot to talk about in the coming months because the whole world is changing and going upside down, and we love it. We're about to straighten this place out in the best way possible. Stay fearless, everyone. And remember, the universe rewards bravery. See you next time.